ever. You understand? You don't know what this is like.
I can get the rat. You just let me do it my way.
There was a leak from the inside, man. Smoke him out. What are you waiting for, honestly? You wanted to chop me up and feed me the poor?
The Departed, a Martin Scorsese picture, rated R.
If we're being honest, Martin Scorsese should have won an Oscar for Raging Bull and also Goodfellas, but hey, it took him 26 years after Raging Bull and 16 years after Goodfellas, but this is a movie where he finally got the respect he deserved, and rightfully so, because this is an incredible friggin' movie. This film takes place in Boston, where you have an Irish mob boss played by Jack Nicholson who plants a mole played by Matt Damon with the Massachusetts State Police, and the two characters are loosely based on famous gangsters, Whitey Bulger and John Connolly, corrupt FBI agent who grew up with Bulger. Simultaneously, the police assigns an undercover state trooper played by Leonardo DiCaprio to infiltrate his crew, and when both sides realize the situation, the two cops both attempt to discover the other's identity before their covers are blown. And really, there's not much more to say about this movie that hasn't already been said. I mean, this is a phenomenal movie that was nominated for several Oscars, won several of them, including Best Picture, Best Director for Martin Scorsese, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Film Editing, and Mark Wahlberg was even nominated for Best Supporting Actor, which he's a guy that I think has long deserved an Oscar. I mean, he's done a lot of great stuff that is very much Oscar-worthy, but just never can get that movie overall, never can get that movie that can push him over the top. But really, there's not much more I can add to this film that hasn't already been said. This is, without a doubt, the best Martin Scorsese film ever. And trust me, that is saying a whole lot because of what this guy has been able to do over the course of the last 4 decades. Even more than that, 5 decades. But a great cast with star talent all across the board. DiCaprio, Damon, Nicholson, Scorsese himself is in here, Alec Baldwin, Mark Wahlberg, Anthony Anderson. Fantastic set design, a fantastic ending that just keeps you on the edge of your seat. This is this generation's Godfather. I don't know why I believe that, but that's the thought that came into my mind. Not much more to say. The Departed, a masterpiece. Check it out if you haven't seen it already. Now, with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, which is a film that is certainly not a masterpiece, more like an astropiece, if you will. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning.
Beautiful.
What is that?
He needs a cookie.
You have to go there. You can stay here. He's gonna be okay.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning, rated R.
Nobody's going to be okay after this movie. Not the people in the movie, or the people that really were too stupid to not realize how bad of a movie this is and went to see this anyway. But before being sent to Vietnam, these two brothers and their girlfriends take one last road trip, but when they get into an accident, a terrifying experience will take them to a secluded house of horrors with a chainsaw-wielding killer. You know, the most stereotypical horror movie synopsis you've ever heard in your life, and yeah. If you think that's the worst they're going to do with it, no. They get even stupider, and they get even more cliched riddled, and they get even more pathetic in their attempts to appease your eyes. Like, there's the women in this movie, you know, you got the two hotties in here, Jordana Brewster and Diora Baird, and, yeah, there are, of course, scenes where Diora Baird's got to have her big breasts sticking out because, you know, she's a beautiful woman with big boobs. Jordana Brewster's got to wear even skimpier clothes than Jessica Biel did in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. And, yeah, we also got to make it more gorier than ever because that's what people really want to see. You know, Saw is a big success now, not because the traps are so unique and clever and something that could be very interesting to watch. No. They like the blood and gore. At least we think the blood and gore is the ultimate key. So let's go ahead and just take it to the next level. And yeah, this is absolutely stupid. This is one of the worst things ever I have ever seen in my entire life. The only reason this movie was made, and this is no joke, is because New Line Cinema had to keep the rights to this franchise after Dimension Films tried to buy it. And they paid almost $3.5 million more than expected in order to keep the rights to the franchise. Was it worth it? Was it really worth it in the end? Because let me tell you something, this movie tells you, no, it wasn't worth it. But then again, when you look at every other Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie that's come out since the original remake, they've all been pretty terrible. Texas Chainsaw 3D is a complete garbage waste. There was another one with Letterface? So there's one that came in 2000. Let me see if I can find it here. No, we've had 3 of them. We've had 3 remakes since this movie, and all of them have been terrible. Leatherface was a bad movie. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 2022 version, was terrible as well. Every single one of these movies have been absolutely awful. They've been so badly put together. They're so horrible. And yeah, it just goes to show you that this thing was dead on arrival. This thing should have stopped at the remake, the 2003 one, because the 2003 one is the only one that actually did something cool with it. It actually had life to it. It actually did something. This movie did not do anything except just make these movies even stupider, even more shameful, even more disrespectful to the original, which is not just a simple movie where, you know, it's not just a simple slasher movie. There was actually a hook to it. There was actually a purpose for it to exist. This is only existing because they need to keep the rights, and because people think the studio thinks everybody here is stupid, that they'll go and see this movie. And yeah, people were not that stupid, even though this was a minor hit. But then again, it was a small budgeted movie. It really didn't make that much of an impact in terms of the budget overall. It was only $16 million, but yeah, other than that, though, this is a garbage movie. This is a complete waste of time. It's a terrible film. Avoid it like the plague. So with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, which is a movie you should also avoid, too. And that's Dane Cook, Jessica Simpson, and Dax Shepard starring in the comedy Employee of the Month.
Co-workers, they're those you love.
My mom made you some blueberry muffins.
That is where you get your charm from, isn't it? Those you love to hate.
Looking for your lounge? I think it's over there.
And those that you want to make sweet monkey love to. No way. Jinx, you owe me a coat.
From the producers of Wedding Crashers,
Maybe you should plant the seed tonight.
Dane Cook, Jessica Simpson,
Something different about you.
It's my tongue.
Oh my.
Employee of the Month, rated PG-13.
This is an 81 Honda. How dare you?
In theaters, October 6th.
That probably is the only really funny line in the entire movie, when Dax Shepard's talking about his car. Like, that's the one moment in the movie that makes me laugh every time. And unfortunately, this movie does not have a lot of laughable moments in here. Now, keep in mind that around this time, Lionsgate was also putting out movies with Larry the Cable Guy, because they apparently thought Larry the Cable Guy was going to be the next comedy star. But most people forget that, you know, Dane Cook started in Waiting the year before, and I guess they took that as a sign that, hey, Dane Cook's got a future as a movie star, so why don't we go ahead and do that? And yeah, the movies that he made overall were, I'm not going to say they were great, but they were certainly a lot better than Larry the Cable Guy's movies. But then again, saying that Larry the Cable Guy movie is better than anything is like me saying Larry the Cable Guy Health Inspector is the next Naked Gun, and I still regret saying that even to this day. But the film's plot here, you have 2 superstore employees played by Dax Shepard and Dane Cook who compete for the affection of their new co-worker played by Jessica Simpson. And boy, if you thought her performance in The Dukes of Hazzard was wooden and plain, this one takes the cake. At least she was trying to do something in The Dukes of Hazzard, but this, oh my god, everybody in this movie is way too stupid for their own good. And this is a film that is so lazy in the attempts that it's trying to make you laugh and trying to get a storyline going here. And yeah, this is not one of those movies that I saw back in the day, and I was like, I thought it was alright. I mean, yeah, this is probably the best overall film where Dane Cook is the lead in it, but even then, it's still not a great movie by any means necessary. And it doesn't help that everybody in here is acting stupid. Like, the whole thing, the reason why Dane Cook even gets the attention of Jessica Simpson as a whole is largely because he gets a star on this board where he's trying to get Employee of the Month. And apparently, that's enough for Jessica Simpson's character to be like, let's go on a date. Like, in what reality does that even exist? What reality is this? Like you get a star on an Employee of the Month board, and all of a sudden it's just like, ooh, I want you to do. I don't even know what the hell I'm trying to go here, but you get the idea. It's just like you expect a star to be the thing that's just like that makes her horny. I mean, that's kind of what I'm trying to say here, but the point I'm trying to make here is that everybody in this movie is really stupid. Everybody does something just to move the plot along, and unfortunately, like, the ways that everybody is trying to get, you know, the employee of the month thing. It's not even something that is like something that grand or exciting or engaging. Like, if you went above and beyond, like I work in retail, if you go above and beyond on something that, you know, you can't really do anything of, it's like you can't really do anything, but you have to try your best to try to solve the problem in general. Like, you gotta, you know, you've got to, what am I trying to say here? Okay, for example, let's say that a customer wants to buy something and they don't have that specific product. So what we do at my job is that, you know, if we can't find it and they're still looking for something, you know, we try to recommend something similar to it. Like, imagine that, and that's the thing that gets everybody. And the customer calls later with the customer servicing and said, "Oh yeah, you did this, and like it's really you really went above and beyond for that." But at the same time, it's just like. Is that really enough to be like employee of the month territory, or get like a gold star? Like, that's something that's a common thing that you do at your job. In this movie, the ways that they try to get the employee of the month thing, and it's just like, you know, the big thing is that like Dane Cook's character makes a woman laugh. And that's something where it's just like, okay, that's a star for you. And that's when Jessica Simpson's just like, let's go out on a date. Like, that type of stuff, like, that's the level of the stupidity it is to get a gold star. Like, Dax Shepard has to get rid of his car because it's in the system and they have to sell it. And apparently sacrificing the car is enough to get him a gold star. Just like, yeah. The stupidity levels in this movie are so ridiculous and so poorly put together. It's unbelievable how bad this movie is. I never really figured it out back then, but now that I see it, it's just like, wow. This is absolutely horrible. This is one of the most abysmal things. I won't even go that far. It's not really that bad of a movie. It's like I said, it's not the worst Dane Cook movie where he's the lead. I mean, trust me. When we get to Good Luck Chuck and My Best Friend's Girl, that's when we really hit the shit. Literally hits the fan. But cue the airplane movie joke there. But my point is that this is not a very good movie. It's a lackluster film. It's a poorly put together film that just doesn't work on any levels, any way, shape, or form. It's a lazy film. It's not funny. Everybody in here acts like an idiot. And yeah, everybody in here is just stock characters. There's nothing about them that makes them funny. There's nothing about them that makes them intriguing. They're just poorly written stock characters. Plain and simple. It's not a good movie. It's not a good film, but compare that to the other movies that Dane Cook is the lead in by Lionsgate. This is probably top of that list, but even then, that's not a list that you want to be on in particular. It's better than the Larry the Cable Guy movie, but like I said, it's not even saying that much. So, yeah, that's Employee of the Month for you. So let's go ahead and move on to our last film, which is Little Children.
Something really beautiful.
Something for my mommy.
It's the hunger for an alternative, and the refusal to accept a life of unhappiness. Aaron's not telling me about his new friend Lucy. She sounds like a sweet little girl. What's her mother like?
Let's just talk about how amazing that trailer is, because holy crap, that trailer is absolutely amazing. Yeah, just it's nothing but just scenes from the movie with a train in the background. You don't really put it together at first, but, you know, like, you hear the train getting closer and closer, like a big collision is about to happen. And yeah, as the trailer shows, it does get pretty intense when it needs to. And in the film, you have Kate Winslet, who's an unhappy housewife who's having an affair with a married neighbor, played by Patrick Wilson. And you have Jennifer Connelly also in here, including, and also Jackie Earle Haley among the cast. It's directed by Todd Field, who did In the Bedroom a couple years prior to this. But this is a really mesmerizing film, and it just works because of just how simple it seems, and then it just goes to these extreme levels where the wheels start coming off the car, and you start to realize as the film goes on, yeah, it's just going to get really worse before it gets better, and yeah, it gets worse before it gets any kind of better, and yeah, the performances in here absolutely fantastic. It was Kate Winslet, Patrick Wilson, you know, Jennifer Connelly doing their greatest stuff here, but the real breakout in this movie is Jackie Earle Haley, who really took off with this movie. Like, he really became one of those great actors for a little bit. You know, everyone remembers him from when he was a little kid from Bad News Bears, but now, 30 years later, he's back in full form, and he's gone on to become one of these great character actors who's done so many movies and so many memorable performances. Like, he really is a great actor, and it definitely shows in this movie why he took off, because, man, he's absolutely fantastic in this movie. This is also based off of a book by Tom Perrotta, who wrote Election a couple years ago by Alexander Payne, the Alexander Payne movie with Reese Witherspoon and Matthew Broderick, and also would later go on to create The Leftovers for HBO, which I've only seen a couple of episodes, not really that impressed by it, but I've heard people really like it. Maybe I gotta watch the entire show, but overall, yeah, this is a really good movie with a lot of great performances all around, a lot of great tension, a lot of great moments where you're just on the edge of your seat thinking, how is this going to end? I mean, what's the end result of this going to be? And yeah, it's a really good movie. It's definitely one of the best movies of the year. Really great film. Can't recommend it enough. Seek it out if you haven't seen it. Little Children.
Your sister's in the hospital.
In 2004, a door was opened. On Friday the 13th,
Close your eyes and count to 10.
what was contained will be unleashed.
She's gonna come for you.
The Grudge 2, rated PG-13, in theaters October 13th.
Okay, first of all, that scene when they're going inside the house with the schoolgirls, and, you know, the one girl's just like, close your eyes and count to 10.
Close your eyes and count to 10.
That is how lesbian scenes start in porn movies. I'm not saying I don't know from experiences from watching them, but yeah, that's how porn movies start. That's how sex scenes start. I'll just say that, but anyway, getting completely off of subject here. The Grudge 2, the sequel to the 2004 movie, which is the movie that looked visually pretty impressive, but it wasn't the greatest overall, but did have a couple legitimately scary moments in there. Yeah, this one, not so much. This was this is essentially the Ring 2 of the Grudge franchise, if you will. Which is funny because the Grudge and the Ring characters, the creatures in those movies actually crossed over for like an Alien vs. Predator crossover film in their native Japan. But in this film, like its predecessor, it follows a plot that is told through a non-linear sequence of events and includes several intersecting subplots. It involves Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, her younger sister Aubrey, played by Amber Tamblyn, who comes to Japan after finding out about Doug's death. A schoolgirl named Allison being haunted by the ghost of the Saki family after entering the house with two of her classmates, and a young boy named Jake, whose apartment building is haunted by the ghost. And yeah, at times this movie does have the creep factor to it, but other than that, though, this is definitely a less your typical horror sequel. It's a movie that is clearly not made to advance the story along or do something that's really cool and different to the first movie. No, it was made solely because of the money. That's all it was. I mean, unlike today when you get something like, Smile 2, where they're clearly trying to add more to it, or the Conjuring movies for that matter, or like most modern day horror sequels nowadays, where they are actually trying to advance the story that they were setting up from the previous movies. We're still in the time when the first movie was a success, so let's do the same thing, except let's dumb it down a little bit. This is the literal definition of a cash grab horror sequel, and yeah, it doesn't have that same spark or the same bit of life that the first movie had. It just is your typical lackluster sequel that really wastes a really good cast in here. I mean, not only do you get Sarah Michelle Gellar back, but you also have Amber Tamlin, Jennifer Beals, man. Like, I always love Jennifer Beals when I see her in anything, and she's completely wasted in this movie in the fact that she is literally given nothing to do. I mean, not wasted, but probably would have made the movie a whole lot more interesting if she was, but yeah, these movies just kept getting worse and worse with every film. The first movie had a little bit of an edge to it because of the creep factor, but you could just tell they were already running out of ideas for a series that kept getting worse and worse with each passing film. The next one was a direct-to-video sequel, and then they made a remake, which was somehow even worse than the other two movies. Just not worth it in the end. Like, yeah, sometimes the creep factor and the visuals can look a little bit creepy, but as I've always said, time and time again, visuals don't make the effing movie. So, yeah, not much more to say about The Grudge 2. So, let's go ahead and get to the next movie, which is, one of the more interesting movies I've ever had to see in a movie theater. That's Robin Williams starring as a comedian, a Daily Show-like comedian who becomes the president in Barry Levinson's Man of the Year.
Politicians are a lot like diapers. They should be changed frequently for the same reason.
Maybe you should be president.
What if a comedian ran for president? I will officially announce my candidacy for president.
Wow.
What if he won?
We're going paintballing.
The president has been shot. He's dead. Let's go round them up. On October 13th.
Have you thought what the makeup of your cabinet might be?
Bruce Springsteen is Secretary of State. A joke. Little one. Man of the Year.
I did not have sex with that woman. I wanted to.
Rated PG-13. Starts October 13th.
Do not let that trailer fool you. Yeah, there's comedy in the movie, and there are the traditional Robin Williams quips, but no, this shit gets way too more intense than it needs to be. But we'll delve into that in just a second. But in this movie, you have Robin Williams playing Tom Dobbs, who's the host of a humorous political talk show. And after an on-handed remark, 4 million people are prompted to email their support. So he decides to run for president of the United States, and he ends up winning. And there's all of a sudden there's this whole kind of all the president's men type of political backstory about how there may have been some election interference with getting him elected. And some people like to think that this movie is kind of a precursor to the person that was president for a couple of years and now is going to come back in January, one who I will not say here, but I don't think there's a whole lot of difference there because, for the one matter, the person who's coming in is not really a comedian. I'll just leave it at that. But what I wanted to get across with this movie was that when I was excited to see this movie because, come on, Robin Williams starring as a comedian who becomes the president of the United States screams out a lot of potential. And Barry Levinson is a reliable director. He's made a lot of great movies over the course of his career. You know, Rain Man. You know, this is the guy that did Good Morning Vietnam. This is the guy that did Wag the Dog. I mean, he's made a lot of good movies, a lot of good political satires. And for the most part, the movie opening up started off really strong. There was a lot of fun ideas that the movie was having. And then all of a sudden, the movie just takes this massive, massive tonal shift in the second half, where it's just like, it goes from being a lighthearted comedy to a literal political thriller, and it's just like, what the hell is going on here? And it's not like they changed writers in any way, shape, or form. This was Barry Levinson that wrote this script as well. This is all his baby. Like, this is entirely his film overall. And the movie all of a sudden just takes this 360 turn that just comes out of nowhere. And it'd be interesting if there was a point to it. It'd be interesting if, you know, the twist actually led to something like a message to go out there. But no, it just changes into a political thriller for reasons that are beyond me. And it's just like, what happened to this movie? And it completely ruined everything that made this movie so great overall. And I really felt disappointed by the end of it. It's just like, what happened here? Like, what happened to this particular movie where, you know, they decided to go in this direction? And you know, it's a bizarre film where the first half of it was really good. It was actually leading to a lot of good moments. I thought Robin Williams overall was very solid. You have a cast that also includes Laura Linney, Christopher Walken, Jeff Goldblum. Lots of good talent all around here, but that second half change completely changes the whole angle of the movie, and it just completely ruins the movie as a whole because you can't figure out what the hell they're trying to say here. Like, what's the point? What are they trying to get by with this whole message overall? And it just really fell apart in the second half in ways that I have never seen a movie do before. And I saw it 20 years ago, and I couldn't believe it. I bought it. I very rarely watched it on DVD. And I figured, you know what, since I'm getting ready to watch it again, I'll watch it again. It was around the time the election was coming to an end here in 2024. So I figured, you know what, maybe I'll give it a second chance. Maybe it's grown on me since then. Nope. Still confused by the second half to this very day, and it baffles me why they went in that direction, because, like I said, if there was a point to it, if there was a message they were trying to get across from it that actually made sense, I could buy into it. I think it would make a whole lot of sense, but no, it never does that, and unfortunately, the movie suffers because of that, and it becomes one of Robin Williams' most disappointing movies. Not because of him. It's not his fault the movie is bad. It's everything else. It's Barry Levinson, really, who just decides to take this massive tonal shift that just comes out of nowhere, and it just feels like, what the hell was going on with this film? And I still want to know what the hell Barry Levinson was thinking when he decided to go in that direction, but, yeah, that's the movie, unfortunately, and, it's a shame, because there was a lot of good things about it I liked in that first half, but then the second half the wheels came off the car so quickly after that point. So, yeah, avoid Man of the Year like the plague. I guess I should also mention that not only did the movie present the future of a television personality becoming the president, but two comedians were actually elected to presidencies in their own countries. In Guatemala, Jimmy Morales became the president there, and of course Vladimir Zelensky in Ukraine in 2019. So it wasn't just what happened here in the U.S., but also in other countries as well. So yeah, I guess in some ways it helped predict the future a little bit, but at the same time, still doesn't make up for the fact that the second half just completely ruins the entire ebb and flow of the film. So, yeah, like I said, avoid this one like the plague. But with that said, on to the next movie. And the next movie that I have here, which I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm going to try to remember it before. Oh, yeah, The Marine.
This Tuesday,
They have a hostage. It's my wife.
get ready. John Cena, he is unstoppable, uncensored, and unrated. The Marine, only unrated DVD Tuesday.
I mean, the movie does say it stars John Cena, but I don't know. I didn't see him anywhere in that trailer. There's your obligatory "Where's John Cena" bit. I never really got why everybody tried to use that afterwards. I know that was his thing overall, but like every time a new John Cena movie came out or anything John Cena did, I always keep seeing people going like, well, you know, it says John Cena is there, but I can't really see him. Where is he? And just like, after a while, that shtick really got old, and this was his first real thing that I ever saw him in. I mean, I didn't follow the WWE all that much, but this was the first thing I ever knew that he even existed with, to be quite honest with you. But in the film, he plays a recently discharged U.S. Marine going after some diamond thieves after they kidnapped his wife, who's played by the wife, I believe, of was it Julie McMahon's character in Nip Tuck? She's from Nip Tuck, Kelly Carlson, who, yeah, she looks like a kid. There's no offense to her, but she does look like a person who would be involved in the world of plastic surgery. But she's a good actress overall. I've seen her some stuff that I've liked. I'm curious, is she the girlfriend? Is she the wife of Julie McMahon's character, or Dylan Walsh? Now I'm curious. I know this is dead air and all, but yeah, I don't see here. It's been a while since I've seen Nip Tuck, so I don't even know if they are married at some point. But the bottom line here is that she's in this movie, as is Robert Patrick, who of course has got to play the bad guy in this. And I don't know, the movie itself really wasn't that good overall. I mean, this was, like I said, this was the first time I ever saw John Cena in anything. And of course, now you see him nowadays, and the guy has a lot of charm to him. He has a lot of comedic charm to him as an actor as a whole. But this was back in the day when, of course, he was supposed to be the next big action star. You know, kind of like how Dwayne Johnson was supposed to be the next big action star, and Channing Tatum. And they actually found more success outside of just starring in the action movies as a whole. You know, lighting themselves up for a little bit here. John Cena, of course, did the same thing. But this was back when he was just strictly doing, you know, action movies. And not particularly any good ones in particular. This one's not really that great. It's kind of generic overall. It's nothing too spectacular or amazing. And it doesn't really give John Cena a whole lot to do in terms of, like, showing what he can do as an actor as a whole. And, yeah, it just didn't work as a whole, unfortunately. But like I said, John Cena has proven time and time again that he does have some charm to him that makes him a decent actor over the years. But this is definitely one movie where it's just like, yeah, it definitely wasn't shown. This was clearly made as an attempt to branch out the WWE's film division, which they followed this up with The Condemned, which is basically just 2007's equivalent to The Running Man, and not as good, but so that's the Marine for you. So let's go ahead and move on to the last one we have here. That's Toby Jones leading a cast starring as Truman Capote in Infamous.
What is this thing called love? There's a funny thing called love. Yes, who can solve its mystery?
Toby Jones, Sandra Bullock, Daniel Craig, Peter Bogdanovich, Jeff Daniels, Hope Davis, Gwyneth Paltrow, Isabella Rossellini, Sigourney Weaver.
What is this thing called love?
Infamous.
So in this particular Capote movie, it takes place on November 16th, 1959, where Capote, played by Toby Jones, reads about the murder of a Clutter family. There's no suspects, and with Harper Lee, he visits the town. He wants to write about their response. First, he must get the locals to talk to them. Then he must gain access to the prisoners. One talks consistently. The other, Perry Smith, says little. Capote's implacable, believing that this book will establish a new form of reportage. He must find out what Perry wants. Their relationship becomes something more than writer and character, and Perry is killed in cold blood. The state will execute him in cold blood. Does Capote get his story through cold calculation, or is this the price for him to pay? Or is this just a little tease of the book that will eventually become more known for the most known thing that he's ever written? But, yeah, it's hard to really compare this movie to the Philip Seymour Hoffman movie, because the Philip Seymour Hoffman performance, I think, is a much better performance overall, but Toby Jones, I think, is really good in this movie. I think he does give a good enough performance of Truman Capote that it does feel very different compared to Philip Seymour Hoffman, but if I had to choose between one or the other, I would honestly say that Seymour Hoffman is definitely the better one. But this time he's got a big cast around him in this particular movie. Toby Jones does. Sandra Bullock, Daniel Craig, Lee Pace, Jeff Daniels, Sigourney Weaver, Hope Davis, Gwyneth Paltrow, who's really there to just sing a song to prove that, hey, duets was not a fluke. I can actually sing. And give her credit, she can't sing overall. But if I had to compare this to the other Capote movie I think wins easily. But this film itself isn't terrible. It's just kind of meandering. It's just kind of there. And I think it works mostly because of the Jones performance in here. I think the performances overall carry the film, but the film itself overall isn't enough for me to say it's one you got to check out. Like, if I had to pick the best Capote film to watch of the two, like I said, I'd go with the Philip Seymour Hoffman one. But I mean, if you want to watch both of them, this one's not bad to watch either, but just don't go in there expecting another great Philip Seymour Hoffman caliber performance, because I think his performance is way superior than what Toby Jones brings to the table. So, not much more to say about that one. That is Infamous.
Shoot me. Come on. No, I can't do it. How'd you like that?
Well, how do you do it?
Magic. I'll perform this feat in a manner never before seen by yourselves or any other audience anywhere in the world.
The audience loved it.
This trick is top notch.
We need to celebrate.
A real magician tries to invent something new. It's something that other magicians will scratch their heads over. I suppose you have such a trick. That's what I do. It's the one they're going to remember me for.
What happened?
It was the greatest magic trick I've ever seen. I need to know how he does it. He has no trick. It's real. Every great magic trick consists of 3 acts. The first act is called the pledge. The magician shows you something ordinary, but of course, it probably isn't. The second act is called the turn.
He's obsessed with discovering your method.
The magician makes this ordinary something do something extraordinary. Now you're looking for the secret, which but you won't find it. That's why there's a third act called The Prestige. This department of twists and turns, where lives hang in the balance. Julie, come on! And you see something shocking you've never seen before. This was built by a man who can actually do what magicians pretend to do. Real magic.
I know what you really are.
How does he do it? You want the truth?
Nothing is impossible.
Abracadabra.
No more secrets.
Secrets of my life.
In the story of The Prestige, this is set in London in the 1800s, where you have two rival magicians played by Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, who read each other's diaries containing the secrets of their magic tricks and their personal lives. As we go back in time when the diaries were written, both magicians become obsessed with their rival's best trick. The tricks, as shown to the audience, look the same, but neither magician can figure out how his opponent does it. It's a battle basically between two magicians, and adding a little bit of what Christopher Nolan does so well, and you've got another fantastic film. Now, keep in mind, this movie is very interesting for a number of different reasons. One, it's his first big movie after Batman Begins, and this was before everyone considered him a box office draw and a critical darling, because his movies beforehand were hits, but they weren't the gargantuan hits that they have become nowadays. And I think at the time, this was seen as a little bit of an underperforming movie at the box office, even though it made back its budget of $40 million, and it had both Touchstone and Warner Brothers, Disney and Warner Brothers, behind the film. And it's a film that most people see as kind of the lesser of the Christopher Nolan movies, from what I remember, but I mean, I remember really liking the hell out of this movie. I mean, yeah, it's hard to top Batman Begins, which was his magnum opus at the time, but man, this is such a good movie, and it still holds up really well after all these years, and it's gotten even better than when you think about it. You got a star-studded cast that includes Michael Caine as well, Scarlett Johansson, Rebecca Hall, Andy Serkis, David Bowie as Nikola Tesla, which I think is the most criminally underrated performance in the movie. I mean, David Bowie just shines whenever he's on screen as Tesla, no pun intended. But the movie is visually gorgeous, too, and it's an engaging mystery thriller. Like, you really don't know how these magicians, who's going to come out on top in this, and there's really two different sides to each story, and the film does a very good job of expanding the details of how these magicians do their craft and how one is going to upstage the other and who's going to come out on top in the end. You really don't know who's going to come out on top until you see the film, and what they do with it is very well done. And it features a lot of the same people that made Batman Begins work in terms of the production crew. The cinematographer is back for this, so is the production designer, the editor, and of course many people from Batman Begins, including Bale and Caine. I mean, just a lot of this movie just works incredibly well. It's a wonderfully put together movie, an engaging mystery, a really enjoyable film. I love the hell out of it. I've got nothing else more to say about this film that hasn't already been said. Just a fantastic film. If you have not seen The Prestige, you're doing yourself a huge disservice, especially if you've seen a lot of Christopher Nolan's other great works. This is definitely one that's a must-see. I highly recommend The Prestige. So with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next film, and that's Clint Eastwood's latest film, the first of his two World War II movies, Flags of Our Fathers.
Sorry, bunch of leatherbacks. Maybe make it to the top with this up. Every soldier, here she goes, he's somebody's son.
That's Harlan planting that flag.
All you can see is his behind.
And that's his. I know my son.
Somebody's home. Somebody's hero.
Seeing him in that photograph, I don't know why it makes me feel better, but it does.
From director Clint Eastwood and producer Steven Spielberg, Flags of Our Fathers. Bingo. Starts Friday, October 20th.
So yeah, we've got two very interesting projects from Clint Eastwood released in this year. I mean, we've got two movies that are centering around World War II, and they meet together with Letters from Iwo Jima coming at the end of the year. But Flags of Our Fathers is based off the book of the same name, and it's about the 1945 Battle of Iwo Jima, the 5 Marines and 1 Navy corpsmen who were involved in raising the flag of Iwo Jima and the aftermath effects of that event of their lives. And, of course, it led to one of the most famous pictures in the history of photography. And this film takes the American viewpoint of the battle for Iwo Jima, and then there's another film, the other film, Letters from Iwo Jima, has it from the Japanese perspective. And it's one half of a very interesting idea to have two different movies from two different viewpoints of the Battle of Iwo Jima. It's an interesting concept, but of the two movies, I think Letters from Iwo Jima is the far superior film. It's not that this movie is bad by any means necessary, but I think it's more of a disappointment, mostly because one of the performances I think really stand out on their own. I think they're the best thing about the film, but the story overall doesn't really come together as well as you think it should. And there's two really good writers involved in here, William Boyles Jr. and Paul Haggis. Paul Haggis, of course, had just won the Oscar for Crash the year before, and William Boyles Jr. wrote the script for Castaway a couple years ago. But there's nothing interesting or exciting about the story that should be very interesting that puts it over the top to make it something in it as enjoyable as it should be. It just kind of fails to find that same motivation and pull that the other war films like Saving Private Ryan, Platoon, and Apocalypse Now have. Like, why those movies are still so memorable even after all these years later. And, kind of like what I said before, I think a lot of the heart and soul and the real effort that into this two-part film really goes into the second film. It kind of fits into a number of two-part movies that we've gotten over the years, like The Hunger Games, Harry Potter. The first film usually isn't that good, but then the second film really delivers all the good stuff you were expecting to see, and you can use that in this case as well. I think it's a very well-made film. It's a good, this movie has its good intentions, but I think the second movie definitely is a lot better. We're going to delve into that when we get to December, because that comes out at the end of the year, but in terms of Flags of Our Fathers, it's okay. It's not a bad movie, but it's definitely a disappointing film that I really expected a whole lot more from in general. But for what it is, it's serviceable. But like I said, the other film that Clint Eastwood did later in the year is a much better movie, and I highly recommend that one over this one. But it is kind of required viewing to watch both of those, so you get a good grasp of what you're trying to accomplish here. But I digress. But let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that is... And now I can't remember again. I literally just said it at the top of the show. Oh, now I remember now, because I just looked at it. Let's take a look at the remake of Flicka.
From the beloved American classic.
That horse will never be ridden.
I can ride her.
Comes a movie about the tradition.
Either we hold on till things get better.
You wouldn't sell our ranch, would you?
No way, no how.
The freedom. And the spirit that made America great.
Katie, she's smart and she's strong. When are you going to realize that she's you?
Flicka, rated PG. October 20th, only in theater.
So in this film, you have a coming-of-age story set in the mountain vistas where you have a headstrong 16-year-old played by Alison Lohman whose desire to work on her family's mountainside horse ranch, although her father, played by Tim McGraw, insists she finishes boarding school. She finds a Mustang in the hills near her ranch and then sets her mind to tame a Mustang and prove to her father she can run the ranch. But when tragedy happens, it will take all the love and strength the family can muster to restore hope. And yeah, this is a pretty bad movie. First of all, she's supposed to be 16 years old. Alison Lohman was 27 years old when this movie was being made. So there's your first mistake right there. And I know that some actresses can look like teenagers in their teens, but at the same time, she was 27 years old when that came out. There's your first sign that the movie's not going to work altogether. And the other sign is that we've seen this movie done before way too many times. There have been much better movies that have been done this so much better. Like we talked about Dream of the year before with Dakota Fanning and also Kurt Russell, which I thought was a really good movie, a criminally underrated film. But this film in particular, yeah, it just doesn't work as a whole. It feels like it's trying to sell the soundtrack for Tim McGraw than it actually is trying to tell a story. And I think it really suffers because of that. And because we've seen the story done so many times before, there are much better movies that can do this, where it can be very compelling and very interesting. But this film doesn't have any of that per se. And you're just kind of bored watching the film in general. And it really hurts the ebb and flow of the film when you can't get invested in this, because you've seen this done so much better in other movies. And it's hardest in the right place, but the execution just doesn't work overall, and I really do not like this movie as a whole. So yeah, a hard skip on Flicka. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next one we have here, and that's Sofia Coppola's follow-up to Lost in Translation, Kirsten Dunst in Maria Antoinette. So the film is an impressionistic retelling of Maria Antoinette's life as a young queen, played by Kirsten Dunst, in the opulent and eccentric court at Versailles. The film focuses on Maria Antoinette as she matures from a teenage bride to a young woman and eventually Queen of France. Now, this is the first film, for, like I said, for Coppola after Lost in Translation, so there are a lot of big shoes to fill because Lost in Translation is such a masterpiece of a movie. And kind of like with The Prestige, this did not get the proper respect it deserved at the time when it came out. It was actually kind of seen as a flop, but as time has gone on, it has eventually gotten the good following that it definitely deserves. And I remember liking the movie at first. I will admit that I saw it kind of as a letdown, especially after Lost in Translation. But it is a movie that has indeed grown on me, and it's grown on me mostly because of the performances. Kirsten Dunst, I think, is spectacular as Maria Antoinette. You have a cast that also includes Jason Schwartzman, Judy Davis, Steve Coogan, Rip Torn, Rose Byrne, Molly Shannon, Danny Houston. Just a lot of top talent overall. And I like that it's a different kind of movie from Sofia Coppola. It's not just the same movie we saw for her from Lost in Translation. She's experimenting a little bit more with this movie in terms of the camera style, the way she's shooting the film in general, and I think it works very well to the film's advantage. I think it's a very eclectically put together film, a very nicely put together film that feels very different from the last thing she did. You can tell that she clearly is evolving and trying to do something different compared to what she did before, and I thought it worked very well. I think the film overall is really enjoyable. I think Kirsten Dunst really gives a great performance that probably should have gotten a lot more attention than it deserved, but it's a fantastic film. I highly recommend it. It's one of Sofia Coppola's most underrated movies, in my opinion. One that's definitely worth checking out, and I highly recommend it, Maria Antoinette. So let's go ahead and move on to our last film that we have here, and that is Ryan Murphy's Running with Scissors.
My name is Augustine Burroughs.
I polish my allowance.
But why, Augustine, why?
Because I like shiny things.
I really don't see myself in you at all.
I'm more like my mom.
Your mother was meant to be a very famous woman.
My father just didn't understand my mother and me.
4:30. I have a reading.
I got stuck in traffic.
You're trying to sabotage me. I'm unhappy.
I'm unhappy. I need to see both you and Theodore on a regular and disciplined basis for 5 hours a day.
I'm available, Dr. Finch.
5 hours a day? I can't do that. I have to work.
I'm working on this new movie called Rust, and we're shooting a big scene where I have to pretend to shoot somebody. Surely nothing is going to go wrong in this situation, and, I'm gonna go to hell when I die. I'm gonna go to hell when I die. I sincerely apologize for that, not for what I just did and for the dark humor. But the opportunity was just there, and I had to take it. So, let's talk about Running with Scissors and get away from this hole that I've created myself in. But this is based off of a book called Running with Scissors, and it's the story of how a boy was abandoned by his mother and how he later abandoned her. The year he'll be 15, the parents of Augustine Burroughs divorce, and his mother, played by Annette Bening, who thinks of herself as a fine poet on the verge of fame, delivers him to the eccentric household of her psychiatrist, Dr. Finch. During that year, Augustine avoids school, keeps a journal, and practices cosmetology. His mother's mental illness worsens as he takes an older lover. He finds friendship with Finch's younger daughter, and he's the occasional recipient of gifts from an unlikely benefactor. Can he survive to come of age? And like I said before, this is Ryan Murphy's directorial debut. He had done work previously for Nip Tuck, and certainly not become the Ryan Murphy that we know of today, where he's pretty much everywhere, and not everything he does as a director has worked overall. And as far as feature directorial efforts go, he is 0 for 3 pretty much. I'm saying theatrical releases, because I know he did one movie for HBO, which was actually pretty good. I think it was The Normal Heart. It had Jim Parsons in it, but yeah, this movie was not that Eat, Pray, Love was a terrible movie. The Prom was a terrible movie. This might be his best overall feature film as a director, but it ain't that great either. It's a movie that has a lot of top talents in here, you know. It's besides Alec Baldwin and Annette Bening, you got Brian Cox, Evan Rachel Wood, Gabrielle Union, Jill Clayburgh, Gwyneth Paltrow. A lot of really good talent in the film, but unfortunately, the script overall really is generic, and it feels like you have two different mindsets coming together. You got Ryan Murphy's work and this work of this author, Augustine Burroughs, that really do not mesh together at all, and you could feel it right from the get-go, and it's kind of a dull movie, too. There's really not a lot about this movie where I felt like I got behind the characters. I knew exactly what they were supposed to be like, and I thought that I could get behind them, and you really can't figure that with this particular film, and it really does struggle to find its way. It really does struggle to find a way to work overall and make me interested in what the characters are going through here. And like I said, I think it's mostly because you can't really get behind these characters because they're not written very well, and we've seen stories like this done so much better. And yeah, you can throw as many top talented people as you want to in here, but if the story isn't that good, then it isn't worth working in my opinion. And sadly, the movie does not work. It's a film that has brief aspects of promise to it. Some of the performances can work fine, but there's nothing about it that makes it worthy in the end. But like I said before, it's the best thing this guy's directed in terms of his theatrical releases. But with that said, that doesn't mean a whole lot in terms of greatness overall. It's just not a good film overall. So a minor skip on our Running with Scissors.
Pain. It's part of the puzzle. Blood. It's the price of freedom. Get me out of here! Death. It's not that easy. Saw 3. Suffering. You haven't seen anything yet.
It's funny, that's what most people say after they see every new Saw movie. Suffering, you haven't seen Suffering yet. This is Saw 3, the third installment of the Saw series, as this has become the Halloween tradition of the 2000s, when you have Tobin Bell once again playing John Kramer, known as the Jigsaw Killer, who forces his victims to participate in deadly games in order to test their will to live. He puts a man named Jeff, played by Angus McFadden, through a series of tests of his ability to forgive after Jeff's son was killed by a drunk driver. Meanwhile, John's apprentice Amanda, Shawnee Smith, has kidnapped a doctor named Lynn, who is tasked her with keeping John, who is bedridden with terminal cancer, and alive long enough for Jeff to complete his game. And certainly a very, I'm not even going to say interesting movie, because it really is not. Let's be honest, the only reason we go to these Saw movies anymore is to see what kind of crazy new contraptions they can put together to start killing people with. The traps, like I said before, with the other Saw movies, are the reasons why people kept coming back to these movies. And they come out around Halloween, people are looking for a good scary movie, and boom, there you go. And yeah, the story, nobody really cares about the story, because the story doesn't really evolve as these films go along here. I mean, not until we get to later on down the road. There's only a little bit of evolution with Amanda and Jigsaw, but even then, it's not until we get to the later movies when they were trying to save the series in general. Just recently, we had the last Saw movie that probably did it the best overall in terms of giving us a story that advances the character all along, but these movies early on, they were just there for just to see what kind of cool new traps they would set up here. And yeah, the traps can be interesting too. I mean, we had a lot of these movies back in the 80s, you know, the Jason, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th. Nobody was really going to see those movies to get an advancement of a story or anything. No, they want to see the cool, fun ways that these horror movie icons are going to kill people. And yeah, these are very cool ways to kill people. I mean, these are very fun, creative traps that keep us invested in the films in general. But if you're going into these movies looking for a story in general, you really are looking in the wrong place for that one. But as far as the film itself goes, it's fine. I mean, it's like the other movies in general. You're only going in there to see the kills, and yeah, sometimes the kills can be very cool. This is the one horror sequel that does gory better than something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning, because there is at least some enjoyment factor to it, even though it is grotesque and sometimes and looks very real. I mean, they do a good job of using practical effects to make this work in general. And I think this is the one where they have this one really cool shot where, you know, somebody's getting thrown through a window, and then it immediately cuts to a scene where it immediately cuts to a scene where they're in a police station, and it's all done in one shot. It's like a behind the scenes footage where they're shooting the scene, and like somebody's getting thrown through a window, and then the very next scene is somebody walking into a police station office. And I don't know if it's this movie or the next one, but it's a really cool shot overall. I'm kind of curious myself now. Hold on one second. Okay, it was Saw 4, so I'm not going to talk about it in this particular review. I'll save that for the next one. But going back to Saw 3 in general, it is what it is. I mean, you go into these movies, you either know what you're going to get, and if you don't get what you think you're going to get, you're going to come out disappointed. If you go in there knowing you're not going to get much of a story and you're just going in there for the traps, you'll have a good time. Other than that, I'd say skip it. For me, knowing what I'm going into, I thought it was alright. So, yeah. A decent review overall. But then again, I've never been that big of a fan of the Saw films in general. But I go in there knowing what I'm going to get, and I come out feeling okay about them for the most part. We'll eventually get to the real good ones as we get down the road here. But with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that is Catch a Fire.
When they punished him for a crime,
We have to ask your husband some questions.
he didn't commit.
What kind of man are you?
He became
I will make this right.
everything they fear. A rare combination of heart-pounding excitement
I'm ready to die. Yes, come on.
and a great human story.
You still want to go on? My family was punished for nothing, so let it be for something now.
An explosive real-life thriller.
Go.
From the director of Clear and Present Danger, Catch a Fire.
So this is a political thriller. It's a real-life story of a South American hero's journey to freedom, and in the country's turbulent and divided times in the 1980s, Patrick Chamusso, played by Derek Luke, is an oil refinery foreman and soccer coach who was apolitical until his wife, Precious, and him are jailed, and Patrick is stunned into action against the country's oppressive reigning system, even as Police Colonel Nick Voss, played by Tim Robbins, further insinuates himself in the Chamusso's lives. And I think I'm pronouncing that name correctly. If I'm not, I'm sorry. But my first overall reaction to this when I first saw it was just like, this reminds me a lot of that Sean Penn, Denzel Washington movie Cry Freedom, which came out in the 1980s. And that's the first thing I ever took from this movie when I first saw it. It was just like, yeah, this reminds me of that movie that movie Cry Freedom, which was directed by Richard Attenborough, which pretty good movie overall, criminally underrated. If you haven't seen it, definitely check that one out. And you could say the same thing about this movie, too. This is directed by Philip Noyce, who has made a living making these really good Jack Ryan movies, the Clear and Present Danger, Patriot Games. I mean, he's made a lot of really good films overall. He's made a lot of good, fun action movies as a whole. This one, I think, is very much an underrated movie of his. It kind of came and went, didn't really leave much of a lasting impact overall. And overall, it was a movie that didn't really leave a lasting impact. But I remember watching it, and it was just kind of like, you know, this isn't that bad of a movie. In fact, I would say it's a really good movie. It's a very interesting, different take on a political thriller set in a place that you don't usually expect to see something like this happen in. And it's benefiting by two really strong performances by Derek Luke, who was, of course, an Antoine Fisher, and Tim Robbins, who, what more do you say about his career? I mean, this is a guy that, went from starring in comedies like Bull Durham and, going from those type of films to becoming a really damn good actor as a whole, a damn good dramatic actor. Just a lot of good things about this movie as a whole. Definitely a very underrated movie. One I'd recommend checking out if you're looking for a really good political thriller that's unusual for what you're used to seeing. This is one that's definitely worth checking out. I highly recommend it. Catch a Fire. With that said, let's go ahead and move on to another awards contender this year, and that is Alejandro González Iñárritu's Babel.
Rated R. Now playing in select theaters everywhere Friday.
So in this movie, you've got 4 interlocking stories, so it's kind of an anthology film, connected by a single gun coverage at the end to reveal a complex, tragic story of the lives of humanity around the world and how we truly aren't all that different. You have the story that takes place in Morocco, where a troubled married couple played by Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett are on vacation to work out their differences. Meanwhile, a Moroccan herder buys a rifle for his sons so they can keep the jackals away from his herd. A girl in Japan, dealing with rejection, her mother's death and her father father's emotional distance, her own self-conscious, and a disability, deals with modern life in the enormous metropolis of Tokyo, Japan. And on the other side of the world, the married couple's Mexican nanny takes the couple's 2 children with her to her son's wedding in Mexico, only to meet trouble on the return trip. Combined, it provides a powerful story and an equally powerful looking glass into the lives of seemingly random people around the world, and it just shows how connected we truly are. And yeah, it's a film that is very, very unique in the way it's telling a story. It's a different kind of anthology film with a lot of really good talent involved in here. Brad Pitt, Cate Blanchett are very good in this. Adriana Barraza is very good. Gael Garcia Bernal, Elle Fanning, Michael Pena is also in here. Rinko Kikuchi. Just a lot of really good talent as a whole in this film, and this is a very different film from Alejandro González Iñárritu, who, of course, would later be known for directing some really good movies with The Revenant and Birdman. Some of them would go on to win Best Picture, and it's a very interesting film. It's kind of a precursor, if you will, to something like Vantage Point, which tried to do this kind of thing in a more mainstream light and put it into one setting, which I thought worked okay, but not the best overall. But this is a really good movie. It's definitely one of Iñárritu's more underappreciated films, especially now considering what he's been doing nowadays. But it's definitely a film that's worth checking out. So I highly recommend checking Babel out. Not much more to say about that one. With that said, let's move on to the next movie here, and it is it's a very interesting film, if you will. Let's take a look at the documentary called Death of a President.
I remember the president said something to me like, "Is there a problem?" I remember saying, "No, sir, there's no problem."
We're just rounding up people. We had probable cause.
That was a major security breach.
This time, it seemed to me there was real hate.
He looked at me and he stepped out.
We're just getting reports of a shooting incident. It's not clear if the president himself has been hit, but apparently there are casualties.
I should mention that this was made in Britain, so they couldn't get anybody in America for making this movie because it wasn't made by anybody in America, but it was released by New Market Films, the company that put out Passion of the Christ, by the way. But as you can see, this is a mockumentary, if you will. Not really a documentary, but it's a mockumentary about the fictional assassination of the then President George W. Bush on October 19th, 2007, a year from when this movie came out. A year before this movie came out, year after this movie came out, I should say, but in Chicago, Illinois. And the film presents it as a future history docudrama and uses actors, archival video footage, as well as computer-generated special effects to present the hypothetical aftermath that the event had on civil liberties, racial profiling, journalistic sensationalism, and foreign policy. Certainly something like that almost didn't happen this year, and I'm not even going to mention what happened this year, but it's an interesting concept. I mean, we've had future revisionist history storylines before. Like, one of the most notable ones to me, one of my favorite episodes of television, is the Boondocks episode where they reveal that in the Boondocks, that Martin Luther King Jr. didn't get killed, but he survived. He was in a coma for almost 32 years, and then woke up in the 2000s. And what would it be like if he was still alive? A really great episode, by the way. If you haven't seen it, go check that out. But with this movie, a good idea on paper, but a botched execution. It's one of those movies that is style over substance. A movie that has a unique idea to it, but the storyline, the way the characters are written, and the way it presents itself is not really that great of an idea. And in fact, it just kind of feels like a movie that's trying to get you with a gimmick, and then when you come out of it, it just feels like you're underwhelmed by what you were expecting from it. And it really is a shame, because there is a good idea here for a mockumentary style film, like something on the lines of, like, the day after, after the events of a nuclear war, or they used to do a lot of these back in the day, like these faux movies that were actually these faux news reports that were disguised as movies, like Without Warning was one of them, about an alien invasion, and then there was one in the 80s, Special Bulletin, which was, I think, the events of a nuclear war, a nuclear war, but those were done much better. Ghost Watch is another perfect example of ones that don't do it well, but this, This one, not so much. It's one that tries to give up a really good idea, but it plays it way too safe. It's too safe of a concept overall to be anything engaging or entertaining, and it just falls apart really quickly right from the get-go, and it just has nothing of value to it whatsoever when it's all said and done. And it's a shame, because there is a good idea here for something that could be intriguing, engaging, get a lot of topic discussions going on here, but in the end, it just feels like a movie that was only around for the controversy, and then just wanted to get as much money as it could and just back away, because it didn't want to do anything too extreme with the idea. And it's a shame, because there is a good idea here, just bad execution overall. So yeah, not a very good movie. So unfortunately, that's a hard skip on this one. So with that said, let's go ahead and completely change the tone here by looking at our last film that we have here, and that is Romeo and Juliet, Sealed with a Kiss. And you may have never heard of this movie, but I had never heard of it either, but I remember it from, of all things, this little beauty here, if you remember old late 2000s YouTube poops.
Oh look, a Montague and a Capulet together.
Capulet and Montague together.
It's disgusting. That is my memory of this movie right here. Nothing about the movie itself, just that YouTube poop itself. That is by the Forbidden Douchebag, by the way, if you've ever followed old YouTube. And that's one of the old videos that I remember watching many times on occasion and laughing my ass off at that, because it's really funny stuff. But the movie itself, Romeo and Juliet, Sealed with a Kiss, is a fully animated feature fantasy about two star-crossed seals in warring families that fall in love against their parents' wishes. When Juliet's father gives her hand in marriage to the monstrous elephant seal Prince, Juliet must fake her death in order to be reunited with Romeo. But the plan goes afoul in a desperate race to the end with the help of their friends Friar Lawrence and Kissy the Kissing Fish. Which, that should give you an indication there of how ridiculous this movie is. The day is saved and the young lovers are reunited. Romeo and Juliet, Sealed with a Kiss is the ageless tale of love and prejudice set in an undersea world. A film that can be enjoyed by the whole family. That's a synopsis put together by the director of this movie named Phil Niblick. Now, that name may not sound familiar to a lot of you, but you have definitely seen his work before. If you've ever watched any old classic Disney movies or Universal films, because this is the guy that worked on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He was also an animator on An American Tail, 50 Goes West. He was actually one of the directors on that movie. He also directed the animation for Casper. He worked on We're Back, a Dinosaur Story, Balto. He's done a ton of stuff for like Wolverine and the X-Men, the TV series, Michael Jackson's Halloween. Just recently he did the Marmaduke series, so he's done a ton of work that you're very familiar with. You may not recognize the name, but you have definitely seen this guy's work before. And the interesting thing about this particular movie is that this is all done by him. This wasn't done by any other animation people. He did this movie on a Wacom tablet directly into Flash 4 in combination with Moho software, and it took 4.5 years to complete and was requiring 112,000 frames. So there's an interesting history behind this movie in general of how it got made and the end result of it. And it's, and for that, I gotta give the guy credit for really going in on that, but it's definitely not a good movie per se. But then again, give the guy his credit for really going in and doing this all on his own. Yeah, it definitely feels like a film made by Macromedia in general, because it does move very choppily. It doesn't really move like a theatrical release does, but it's an overall interesting concept overall to do as a story of Romeo and Juliet with seals. And this isn't like there's been a lot of bad Titanic movies that look very similar to this, but this one, it looked like at least they were trying. We've talked about another movie that was similar to this, Help I'm Fish, which that one, at least that one looked like it was made for and intended for a theatrical release in general. But This movie, you could definitely tell this was made mostly by one person, and it's really gonna falter because it really does feel like a film that was made by one person in general, and it just didn't feel like it was a film that was completely ready for the big screen or not. But it's an interesting concept overall. The execution, though, not that great. Sometimes the animation can look really choppy at times, but then it can look pretty good. You remember, this is made by a guy who did a lot of work at Disney and Universal in their heyday. And, yeah, there's a lot of it here that you got to give the guy a lot of credit for. But other than that, though, it is definitely a film that is very... It's a flawed movie. It's not that great of a movie, but it is a very intriguing film just for the production of it alone. Just seeing this guy putting 4.5 years of his life to work on this movie. And for that, I got to give him credit for it. For all the bad animated movies, like the so bad it's good animated movies like Rhapsody Street Kids, The Christmas Tree, Help I'm a Fish, those movies we've talked about before. This one is probably the lesser of the bad movies, but it's a movie where I gotta give it its proper credit for the fact that this guy put all of his effort into it and made it, finished to accomplish what he did, and the end result is a very, very odd film to say the least, and one that I say, yeah, I'll give you your points for that, because yeah, you spent the 4.5 years, you made a very interesting film. I just can't say it's a good movie per se. So very mixed opinion on this one, but it's a so bad it's good. It's not really a so bad it's good type of movie, but it is a odd movie that is definitely worth the watch, especially if you like odd animation to say the least, and especially if you like stupid YouTube poos like this again.
Oh look, a Montague and a Capulet together.
Capulet and Montague together. Montague and Capulet together.
It's disgusting.